Welcome back. Now we're going to get a bit geeky here. Let's explore behavioral science and the science of communication with human psychology. Why not learn how to sell working with human behavior instead of working against it? Now here's a reason why I'm doing this for you. It's because before I train you what specific questions to ask at the right time in your sales conversations so that you can close more, you first have to understand why you're asking the questions in the first place, meaning what psychological powers do the questions have and why do they actually work? So check this out. According to behavioral science, there are 3 forms of communication. Number 1, we are the least persuasive when we tell people things, or we attempt to dominate them, or posture them, or push them into doing something we want them to do. The least persuasive. Think about it this way. If you're to get someone interested in dating you, and all you did was talk about all the great things that you had to offer them, you only focused on you and your agenda of getting them to do what you wanted them to do, and you didn't listen to them, but then you started pressuring them into going on a date with you, what do you think would happen? Yes, they'd reject you, of course. It's the same in sales. The old way of selling teaches you to be pushy, to dominate, and to put pressure on people. It's focused on presenting, objection handling, and closing, and only focused on you, the salesperson, not the prospect, and solving their problems. It's just like if you tell your spouse they need to do something for you, what do they typically do? They push back, right? Here are a few examples. Presenting. This is in the first form of communication. We're all taught that we have to have a great presentation. We have to show them how great our product is, but according to the data, it's not actually very persuasive. What about telling your story? We're all taught that you have to have a great story to sell. But I'm here to tell you this. Nobody cares about your story. Whose story do they care most about? Theirs, of course. What about giving a sales pitch? We've all been told you've got to give a great pitch. But according to the science, it's not very persuasive. What about putting sales pressure on a prospect? Were you taught how to do that? And here's the big one, assuming the sale. According to the data, it's very clear in our day and age, this is very low on the persuasion pole. Hence, this is where the term sales is a numbers game comes from. These techniques force it to be a numbers game because they turn off so many of your prospects in our day. Now, how many of you use these techniques or were taught to use them? Be real with yourself. Now, the second form of communication, we're more persuasive when we interact and we discover from each other. This is known as consultative selling. Came out in the late 1980s with books like Spin Selling, which were revolutionary at that point, where they taught you how to ask logical-based questions to find out the needs of the client, like this type of question. Mr. Jones, what are 2 or 3 problems your company is facing now? But what's the potential downfall with this style of selling? Well, when you only ask your prospect logical questions, they give you logical answers in return. So let me ask you this. Do people buy on logic or emotion? Well, we now know from the science, 100% of people buy on emotion as a human being, and they justify their purchase using logic. So once again, it's more persuasive than the first mode of telling your story, putting sales pressure on a prospect, and assuming the sale. But you're still playing the numbers game because very little emotion is brought out by asking only logical-based questions. I see so many salespeople out there move through their standard list of questions like a robot, not really listening or building any trust. And even if they ask the right questions, it may feel to the prospect like it's totally scripted in a forced conversation. That's not what we're after. Now, the third mode of communication is called dialogue, when we ask what are called neuro-emotional persuasion questions, or NEPQ. We are most persuasive when we allow others to persuade themselves. According to behavioral science, this is the most persuasive form of communication. So, okay, How do you allow others or get them to persuade themselves? Is it that easy? You just show up and give your prospects permission to persuade themselves? Like, hey, Sally, go ahead and persuade yourself. And by the way, make sure you write out the check to my company's name. No, of course not. You have to learn specific, skilled questions and when and how to ask them in a step-by-step structure that will get your prospects to sell themselves rather than you trying to do it. That's what the NEPQ method will teach you. So if you'd like to learn how to get your prospects to sell themselves rather than you trying to chase them down to try to convince them to buy, continue down this learning path with me. Step outside of your comfort zone and shed yourself of old school traditional selling techniques that are holding you back from where you could be in your sales career. Now, I can't wait to see how you transform and how your income is impacted for the good. Now, here's a quick quiz. Don't worry. I know you're going to do great.
Fuck. The old mood though. Bruh, I'm fucked. Fuck. Emotion? Yes. Spin selling. Bruh. True or false? If you ask the right questions, it may feel. I have no idea what these are, fam. Fuck, I'm so fucked.